Last year, the average one-bedroom apartment in an American city cost over $2,000 a month. That number does not include parking, the electric bill, the internet that drops on every important call, or the delivery fees on food ordered because cooking in a 400 square foot kitchen stopped feeling worth it sometime around 2023. A lot of people are starting to do the math, and the math is not flattering to the city. However, what's happening as a result isn't what you'd expect. Quietly, without press releases or lifestyle blog announcements, a growing number of people are packing up and moving off the grid. Not the doomsday preppers with the underground bunkers and the freeze-dried beef. Accountants, nurses, software developers. It's people who spent 15 years building a very respectable urban life and woke up one Tuesday morning genuinely unsure why. This is the story of why they're leaving, where they're going, how they're powering, feeding, and funding it all, and what is actually waiting on the other side. There is an unspoken agreement that city life has always run on. You pay more, you put up with more, and in return you get more back. More career opportunity, more culture, more access to everything you might want on a Tuesday at 11 in the evening. For a long time that deal worked, and for plenty of people in plenty of cities, it still does. But somewhere around 2022, the terms started shifting. And by 2026, for a specific slice of the population, the arrangement has quietly stopped making sense. Rents across major U.S. Metros are up roughly 30% over the past 5 years. In cities like Austin, Miami, and Phoenix, the numbers are considerably worse. Wage growth over the same period ran about half that, so the gap widened. People started spending a larger share of their income on the basic cost of being somewhere. But rent is only one layer of this. The other part is harder to put on a spreadsheet. Researchers have been tracking urban stress for years. The data from the mid-2020s is not encouraging. Noise pollution, light pollution, the low-grade psychological weight of being surrounded by people you don't know at all times, all of it accumulates in ways that don't show up in a rent comparison. The American Psychological Association stress surveys from 2024 and 2025 both identified housing cost anxiety as one of the top 5 reported daily stressors for adults under 55. Not a distant worry, but a background hum that doesn't turn off. And beyond the financial pressure, the city is exhausting in a way that used to feel exciting and has, for a lot of people, quietly stopped being either. But if that were the whole problem, people would simply move to the suburbs. What is actually happening is more interesting than a suburb. The off-grid migration of the 2020s does not look like the one from the 1970s. In the 1970s, the Back to the Land movement was largely driven by young idealists reacting against industrial culture. It produced communes, organic farms, and a number of optimistic newsletters that stopped publishing after about 2 years. This wave is different. The people leading this movement in 2026 tend to be between 38 and 55. They have skills. They have some savings, or at least the beginnings of savings. Many have remote jobs. And critically, they have spent enough time in the city to know exactly what they're trading away. They're not running from something they don't understand. They're running from something they understand completely. The U.S. Census Bureau confirmed continued outmigration from large metros through 2024 and 2025, with rural counties in states like Tennessee, Maine, Montana, and the Ozark regions of Missouri and Arkansas seeing population increases for the first time in decades. These aren't people moving to other cities. They're going somewhere with trees. The profile that keeps appearing, one or both partners work remotely. They have at least one child or are thinking about it. They're not particularly ideological about the lifestyle. They're just tired of paying $2,000 a month to live in a box that vibrates when the subway goes by. The subway, incidentally, was delayed again this morning. The city thanks you for your patience, but knowing who is leaving only gets you halfway. The more interesting question is where exactly they think they're going. Off-grid doesn't mean the same thing to everyone making this move. On one end, you have full disconnection. No grid power, no municipal water, rainwater collection, solar panels, a wood stove, and enough land to grow a meaningful share of your food. These people exist, but they're not the majority. On the other end sits what's being called resilient rural, people who buy land in a small town or rural area, connect to local utilities where they're available, and add off-grid systems as backup and supplement. They have a garden, maybe chickens, a deep well. Grid-tied, but not grid-dependent. The bulk of people making this move fall somewhere in between, leaning toward the resilient rural end. Land prices in rural America vary enormously. In parts of the Ozarks, 5 to 10 acres with a basic structure can still be found under $100,000. Appalachian regions, parts of upstate New York, central Maine, and stretches of the rural Midwest offer similar value. Compare that to the $400,000 to $700,000 starter homes in many mid-sized American cities, and the math starts doing something interesting. When the trade-off is distance, you are further from hospitals, from airports, and from the particular grocery store your children have decided is the only acceptable one. But broadband access, which was once the decisive obstacle for anyone considering this move, has shifted considerably. Satellite internet now covers most of the continental United States. Rural cellular infrastructure has improved. For remote workers, the connectivity argument for staying urban has weakened significantly. So they have the land. Now comes the part that stops a lot of people cold. This is where the rubber meets the road and where a lot of people who have romanticized off-grid living discover that it involves actual work and actual money up front. Three core systems need to be addressed: power, water, and food. A properly sized solar system for a modest home, and enough to run appliances, lighting, a refrigerator, and basic electronics, costs somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 installed, depending on system size, location, and whether battery storage is included. That sounds steep until you consider that grid electricity costs across the U.S. have risen 20 to 40% since 2021, depending on the state, with further increases forecast through the decade. After the system pays itself off, typically somewhere between 7 and 12 years, the electricity bill drops to near zero. The sun, it turns out, does not send invoices. Battery storage has also become meaningfully more affordable. Lithium iron phosphate battery banks, which carry usable lifespans of 15 to 25 years under normal conditions, have seen significant price reductions since 2022 as manufacturing scaled. Water sourcing depends entirely on where you land, literally. Well drilling runs from $5,000 to $20,000, depending on depth and local geology. Many rural properties already have functioning wells. In the right climates, rainwater collection with proper filtration covers significant domestic water needs. It is solvable. It requires research specific to your location and an honest upfront budget before you buy. Food production is where the gap between expectation and reality tends to be widest, and it deserves an honest accounting. First-year gardens routinely underperform expectations. The learning curve is steeper than it looks. A productive kitchen garden in a good season might cover 15 to 25% of a family's food needs in year one. With fruit trees, perennial crops, and better technique over time, that number grows. But it grows slowly. Growing food is not a replacement for a grocery budget, at least not at the start. It is a supplement, a skill set, and for a large number of people, the first thing in years that produces a genuine sense of having accomplished something with their hands. The systems are buildable. But there is one question that stops nearly everyone who seriously considers this, and it deserves a real answer. How do you make money when you're not near anything? There is no version of this answer that involves magic, and glossing over it would be a disservice. And the people who make this transition successfully almost always fit one of three income models. The first is remote employment. This is the largest group by a wide margin. If you already work remotely, or your employer permits it, the transition becomes significantly more manageable. You carry your income with you. The rural cost of living reduces your monthly overhead. The financial math improves considerably. The second is portable online income. Freelancers, consultants, writers, designers, developers, coaches. This model requires building the income before making the move, not after. People who attempt to figure out the income piece after arrival tend to have a very stressful first year, which is the exact opposite of what they move for. The third is local trade income. Rural areas are consistently underserved for skilled trades. Bookkeeping, tutoring, home repair, and dozens of other services that follow population wherever population goes. This is slower to build and more location dependent. It typically functions best as a supplement to one of the first two models rather than a standalone income. A growing number of people making this work in 2026 combine elements of all three: a remote contract, some freelance work, and a seasonal local income from something produced or provided nearby. None of it is elegant in year one. By year three, it tends to be more stable than it looks. But before anyone starts pricing out solar panels and seed catalogs, there is something this video would be doing you a disservice to skip. Off-grid and rural living is harder than the YouTube homesteading channel makes it look. This is not a secret, but it bears saying plainly. One, the first year is typically the roughest. You are learning new systems in a new place, often doing physical work you haven't done before, while still managing whatever income obligations pay the bills. The learning curve is real and it is steep. Property maintenance in a rural setting is not a building super's problem. Every leak, every broken fence post, every failing pump is yours. If you are not handy when you arrive, you will become handy. Or you will spend significant money on a tradesperson who drives 45 minutes to fix the thing. The nearest hardware store is 30 minutes away. You will make many trips. Social isolation is real for some people and consistently underestimated before the move. Rural communities can be close-knit, which is a genuine asset once you're part of one, and an invisible wall until you are. As it takes time. Some people find it slower than expected. Others who were genuinely exhausted by urban social density find the quieter pace to be an enormous relief. Both experiences are well documented. Medical access is a legitimate consideration that varies significantly by location. People with chronic conditions or families with young children should research hospital and clinic proximity carefully before choosing a property, not after. And permits. Rural areas can have zoning restrictions on outbuildings, composting toilets, rainwater collection, and the number of chickens you're legally allowed to keep. None of it is insurmountable, but it is not nothing. Research your county's regulations before assuming that because there are trees and nobody's watching, you can do whatever you want. But none of those things are what gets people in the end. The first 6 months of adjustment are rough in ways the permit filings cannot prepare you for, and therefore what you find on the other side of them tends to surprise people. The people who have made this move and stayed for 2 or more years describe something that resists easy summarizing. It is not paradise, and it does not pretend to be. The pipes still freeze, the garden had a bad year, and the income took longer to stabilize than the spreadsheet said it would. One of the neighbors is difficult, which turns out to be a universal constant regardless of geography. These are ordinary life problems, but the baseline has changed. The background noise level has changed. The specific anxiety about rent, about whether the city is sustainable, about whether you are getting any return on the enormous amount of money it costs to simply exist somewhere. That anxiety tends to quiet once you've bought land and know what your costs actually are. People who move with children consistently describe changes in their children's behavior as one of the first things they noticed. More physical activity, less ambient restlessness, and fewer screens, not because of household rules, but because there was something outside worth doing. What surprises people when you read their accounts or talk to them directly is not how hard it was. It is how quickly normal shifted. What felt extreme from inside a city apartment felt, within a year, simply like the way things are. If the life you've built in the city is genuinely working for you, this video is interesting but not urgent. That's fine. But if some part of you has been running the numbers quietly, lying awake doing math that doesn't balance, or pulling up rural land listings at midnight and then closing the tab because it felt irresponsible, you're not alone in that, and you're probably not wrong to wonder. The off-grid movement in 2026 is neither fringe nor countercultural. It is a growing number of regular people concluding that the deal they originally agreed to in the city no longer reflects their finances, their values, or their sanity. And quietly, without making a big announcement, making a different arrangement. Subscribe.